Hey guys, it's the Nerdy Movie Guy. So today we're going to talk about The Bad Batch Season 3, Episode 2. Now, in this episode, we finally get to take a look at Hunter and Wrecker and what they've been doing since we last saw them in the Season 2 finale. So, when they enter the screen, the first thing I noticed is maybe it was something I missed. I'm not sure, but Wrecker's armor just seems severely beat up. It just looks more scratched, more scorched. It just looks like he's taken the most damage out of pretty much all of the clones we've seen in the show so far, as far as the weathering on the armor is concerned. So I don't know if this happened in season 2 finale and I missed it, or this is just sort of explaining, maybe all he's been through since the last time we've seen him. Regardless, it's a neat look for him. He's the strongest one out of the four, so the fact that he seems to have visibly taken the most damage, at least to his armor, is just sort of something interesting to see and just sort of goes along with the character as well. So in this episode, obviously they are looking for Omega, and there are some very interesting plots for these two characters that we notice pretty much immediately. And that is Hunter is struggling to look for Omega. He also seems a little bit panicked, and he seems a little bit anxious as well. As far as he sees it, Echo had left his team, Tech has passed, and Crosshair had abandoned them or betrayed them a long time ago. So the way he sees it, Wrecker is sort of the only one he's got left. But he doesn't really seem to be taking on the leadership responsibilities with Wrecker. He seems to be very focused on Omega, finding her, because she's one of the few living members that he has left that he feels he's let down. So finding her is his top priority. Excuse me. And in this episode, that's one of the interesting stories we get to see for Wrecker. Is, like so many of us, Wrecker's the goofy one. He's the loud one. He's the one cracking the jokes. He's the one that's just super confident with himself, whether or not he's right about it or not. And he's just always been, the very animated, no pun intended, character for the show. And the fact that we don't really see a lot of that in this episode, I think goes to show he's had a lot of character growth. He's had a lot of character progression. And it's just really neat to see because we didn't expect to see these sorts of things with a character like Wrecker. And in this episode, we see he's sort of leaning on Hunter, giving him all the support he needs, reassuring him, being the backup, just being whatever Hunter needs him to be. And I think a lot of us in our lives have maybe felt closed off. Just trying to be there for others around us. So I think this is a very human quality to see in Wrecker. And because of that, because he's sort of shut himself in to be whatever he needs to be for Wrecker, I think, like I've mentioned with Omega and Crosshair in the last episode, we now have a personable human connection with Wrecker. And that's something that's just really neat because I didn't expect Wrecker to be that kind of a character in the show. I didn't expect to connect with him on a human level, but now we have, and because he has that story now. So in this episode, they are looking for Omega, and this takes him on a new journey where we see what would have been clone troopers. We now see a handful of clone cadets helping them out, trying to get them what little information they can to begin looking for Omega, just to help them on their journey. They seem to have been looking for her pretty much ever since the Empire took her. And so they're kind of grasping at straws. They don't have a solid lead on Tantus. So that's something really interesting to see in this episode, seeing these clone cadets who would have just basically been in the earliest stages of basic training are now forced to survive on this very hostile world, stranded. So they're forced to grow up and mature so very quickly. And I think this also plays in hand with showing the grasp of the Empire on the galaxy. Just be able to chokehold these children are now seeing them have to mature and grow up and survive, all because of the Empire just left them behind. They destroyed the base there. And so I think this helps the story with the Empire as well. Like I said, the Empire is being portrayed extremely well in this show, I would say. Just showing the Empire not only being a threat to the handful of our main characters, but to the rest of the galaxy. Because that's the way Star Wars should be. When the original trilogy released, the Empire was the main villains for the whole story. And even though in the prequels we didn't have stormtroopers yet, we saw Palpatine, and we get to see him manipulate practically the entire galaxy toward the Empire. And the sequels sort of toyed around with the idea, with Palpatine being behind that as well, but we got so little information to the point where the prequels and the originals are our primary 6 movies, where the Empire has always been the main goal for Palpatine. And to be able to see that in this episode and this series as a whole, I think just makes it feel more connected to Star Wars as a whole and the rest of the saga and the rest of the movies. You know, the clone troopers were just discarded. And in the originals, obviously, there are no clone troopers in the original movies. But the Clone Wars, as mentioned, it is part of the story, just not the characters individually. Now, through series like Rebels, they've inserted some clone characters into the events of the original trilogy, but still, this show is giving us new stories with new characters in a time where the Empire is at pretty much its strongest. The Empire doesn't start to cripple until the rebellion really starts going after them, until the events of A New Hope, when the Death Star is destroyed. So in the Bad Batch, it's almost a sense of dread because there is no beating the Empire. There's certainly no beating Vader. I don't suspect the Bad Batch will ever come across Palpatine. And the cameos we've seen in the trailer for this season, I wouldn't put it past this season to maybe see more Imperial leadership, like maybe Krennic, probably Tarkin at some point, maybe even Thrawn. I don't know, but there's a lot of opportunity with the season and with this series. So far, the Empire is so far being portrayed extremely well. That's something I've always appreciated, because that's why I appreciate it from the prequels. That's why I appreciate it for the most part in Rebels. That's what I'm appreciating about the Bad Batch now. So all in all, I was very impressed with this episode. At the end of the episode, they don't find Omega, and I have no idea what's going to happen in episode 3. I hope Omega and hopefully Crosshair can find them eventually. I just have no idea what's going on with Tantus. There's so much mystery with who could escape, who will escape, how many clones will be at a time, if any at all. My guess is probably just be Omega for now, and going back for Crosshair could be a really neat story later on. So regardless, I'm excited for the rest of the season. It is the final season, and connecting with these characters now, it just kind of makes me sad to realize this is the final season, because right as I start to really connect with these characters is when we know they're coming at an end, or at least for the show. So regardless, the season's been great so far. I can't wait to see the rest of it. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me. Keep it digging.